who does your CFO report to? And I said, our COO. And he said, why? I said, because I'm super busy as the CEO doing this and this and this. And I need our chief operating officer to have all of these other people reporting to him. And he said, but Suzanne, in my conversations with you, your number one place of insecurity are the finances, are the numbers. I said, exactly. That's why I want the CFO to report to the COO, who's much better than I am at the numbers. And he said, oh no, delegate that which you know, keep that which you don't.
Today, we're joined by the incredible Suzanne Muchin, a titan in the business realm and a fervent champion for women's empowerment. Suzanne will be taking us through her journey from her initial steps in the corporate ladder to her influential role at Bonfire, a groundbreaking platform championing women in their professional pursuits. Throughout this episode, Suzanne will shed light on the challenges she's faced, the pivotal role of mentorship and sponsorship, and the intricate interplay of personal faith in a professional setting. We'll also delve into the evolution of the workplace, particularly for women, and discuss the inherent biases in traditional work constructs. Key takeaways for today: grasp the nuanced difference between mentorship and sponsorship and their impact on career trajectories. Uncover the hurdles women encounter in the corporate sphere and strategies to overcome them. Delve into the intersection of personal faith and professional aspirations. Explore the changing landscape of work and its ramifications for women. Learn from Suzanne's transition from the airwaves to the podcasting world. Understand the importance of recognizing one's unique contribution to a larger mission or vision. Dive into the dynamics that make a business partnership thrive, and so much more.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Hero of the Hour podcast. I'm here with a very, very special guest today, Suzanne Muchin, who is an entrepreneur. She's an assistant clinical professor at Northwestern. She's an
associate.
You're also,
academia is title obsessed.
I will get that right. So that's why I'm putting my glasses on so I can read it. Right. So you're not only a professor, you're an entrepreneur, you're a podcast host, and unlike me, a good one, and you're an investor as well. How do you get it all done?
You know what? Sometimes I don't. So I'm not a believer in work-life balance as a philosophy where you have these beautiful days where, it's all kumbaya and you have these meditations in the morning and then your days just balance themselves out. Some days you don't get it all done. I think it's more of interval training, like an athlete who's in season. That's how it feels.
I find so many people also, it's men and women, there's just so much on their plate that they're just melting down. And we didn't even talk about any things you have in personal life of the other responsibilities you have, after all of your vocational, your vocational issues. But I am, as you know, Suzanne, I'm a father of 5. We've got 2 girls. And for the people who are out there watching this podcast, I was introduced to Suzanne as a founder or co-founder of a company called Bonfire. And when I immediately spoke to her, I knew I needed to be an investor, not only because I thought it was a great company, but I thought the purpose was so spot on. Why don't you share with people how you came to Bonfire and tell people about it? Because I think it's something that's going to be a game changer in our country.
Well, thank you for that. And you and I immediately bonded. I also am a mother of 5, 2 girls, 3 boys. So I remember we had that in common. So Bonfire is a talent development accelerator for mid-level career women. And so very simply put, what that means is that for companies who want their women who, let's call it 8 to 15 years into their career, to really thrive and keep at it, stay in the workforce and take on leadership roles, they need to focus on them and give them more skill development, resources, network capacity earlier on in their career. And that just isn't happening. And so we see that dropout happening, and women just aren't making it into the leadership roles in their companies at a large enough rate. So what Bonfire how it really came about, to be honest, was I was in, let's call it semi-retirement. I mean, I'm never retired. People like me don't really retire, but I was living a pretty good life. I had sold my last company in 2012, and I was mostly focusing on being a professor at Kellogg at Northwestern University. And Rachel, my longtime business partner and best friend, she and I had left our last company with our 5 biggest and most fun clients, and life was good. But then the Me Too movement started. And like you, I have daughters, and my daughters were entering the workforce. And here's what I discovered, Mark. This was, let's call it 2017. I discovered that all of the sudden, I was everyone's favorite board member, and I was everyone's favorite podcast host, and I was everyone's favorite fireside chat host. And all of a sudden, I thought, oh my God, you think I'm a woman. Like, I actually had no idea you thought I was a woman. I thought you thought I was just Suzanne Muchin, like a badass professional person. But you think I'm a woman. And I had no idea you thought of me that way until now. And if you think of me that way, what about our daughters? What about the people with much less privilege than me? What about all of the other women who are not as successful as I am? What about them? So I called up Rachel. I said, we're coming out of retirement. We're going to do one more thing together. And she and I had been business partners for over 20 years. I said, we're going to do one more thing, and we need to build this company, and we need to build it now. And it cannot focus on the C-suite women, more women in the C-suite or more women on corporate boards, because that's too late. If those women have already made it, they don't need more. It's this women in the thick part of the pyramid where culture is built at companies. Those women need our focus. So I pulled Rachel out of retirement. I raised a $2 million seed round, and off we went. There's a lot more, but I'll stop there.
First of all, I see you as many things, but I see you as a badass first. So I just want to go on record. I want to go on record as
Thank you.
as saying that. But I was going to say for who is this? You know, there's a lot of people, a lot of women watching this podcast. There's a lot of people that employ women on watching this podcast. Who would be appropriate to explore Bonfire?
So we're an enterprise facing model. So our customers are the companies, and the women are the beneficiaries of Bonfire. They go through our accelerator program. They go through a 6-month experience with us where they're getting skill development. They're getting a cohort experience where they're meeting other women literally from around the globe. It's all a virtual experience that is highly curated, very focused, very intentional, but the beneficiary is also the customer, client, company. So this is for, quite literally, Mark, any company that has women who are in this range, 8 to 15 years. And let me give you an interesting statistic. So BMO, who is one of our larger clients, did an internal study recently and found that Bonfire women were 3x more likely to stay at BMO than their comparative employees of the same age, same levels of employment, 3 times more likely from a retention point of view to stay. That's a pretty darn good statistic for the company in an era in which we have, people leaving, people job hopping. And so for the company, it is very good, especially because we're focused on not just women as diversity, but a diverse group of women.
The number one thing I hear from our clients is they can't find people or they can't find good people. And there's a war on talent out there. And so one of the things I was so excited about Bonfire for any company of any size is that it's certainly really affordable. But the idea is it's certainly not an expense, it's an investment. And I just was blown away, which is why I wanted to be part of the company. Um, and so I thought it was absolutely terrific. One of the things I noticed in your bio, which I'm fascinated, and we have not had a chance to talk about it, but I think the one of the best skill sets that people need to have is the power to influence. I mean, I think that's what we're hired to do in almost any
For
job.
sure.
And your quote and your what you teach is selling yourself and your ideas. So I can't think of a more powerful topic. So I want to find out more about that.
You do want to find out more about that, Mark, because it is actually um, among the most popular courses at Kellogg. You can't get into it. Actually, you personally couldn't get into it, even knowing me, you couldn't. It's interesting. Kellogg is a marketplace system as a business school, and so what that means is students are given 3,000 points at the start of the school year, and then they have to bid on courses to get in. And so it's an open marketplace. And by the way, once the bidding starts, everyone can see it. So you know what students bid on, you know the value of your course in the marketplace. You know it, the students know it, the other professors know it, the deans know it. It's a very stressful situation. But our course has been consistently at the top of the bidding list with a wait list. And we will, by the way, put over 500 students through the course this academic year and still have a wait list. And they will often spend over half of their bid points just to get in. And here's the reason why. It is exactly what you said, which is there is no more important skill in today's economy of career and career building than influence. There just isn't. I mean, knowledge is now a commodity. And so we have to look at the other skills that really lead leaders to be able to succeed. And so what we teach starts with an interesting theory, which is ideas are not sold, they are bought. And if that's true, then you have to be able to actually have a particular quality, which many people think cannot be taught, but it can, which is tactical empathy. And tactical empathy, as I will explain it, is not sympathy. Sympathy is a feeling, empathy is a skill. And tactical empathy is the ability to understand what the person across from you is thinking, getting behind their brain, actually understanding it at a very deep level, caring enough about it, actually caring enough about it to want to meet that need. And then the question becomes, do you actually have the skill set to be able to talk to that person in a way that allows them to feel and trust that you will meet that need? And the skills of doing that are the skills of influence, but not in the old, like Carnegie way. Like, we don't do that. We're really operating in 2023 in a world where trust is your currency and relationships move at the speed of trust. But behind that are very nuanced skills like storytelling, having what we call a pointy point of view, which also means I have to be able to tell you exactly what I think and hold the floor, even if you disagree with me. And in fact, Mark, particularly if you disagree with me.
That makes
And
sense.
so on.
That's no, that I would think that anybody that came out of that course and could successfully navigate that would have mastered probably the most important skill in business and in life. So I can see why there's a wait list on that. I can't think of a more useful uh class than that in terms of practicality and a skill you can use for the rest of your life. I know you're a mentor. I'm a mentor, One of the things in our organization, as we've encouraged people to become mentors, not only internally, but externally, there were a few people in the beginning who thought they were doing people a favor by mentoring. And in a way they were lifting up some of the newer people in our organization. But I think quickly we've gotten people to understand that the best way to master a subject on a deep level is to teach it to somebody else. And so I know you're a mentor at 1871 and at Techstars. I'd love your take on why do you do it, and what do you give and what do you get out of being a superb mentor?
First of all, let me separate two terms that I think really matter. I'm going to separate the term mentor from sponsor, right? So for me, a mentor is someone who is intentionally teaching a skill set that is specific to the needs of the person they're facing, not a generic skill set. And it's a time limited relationship. A sponsor is someone who puts their name against yours and is willing to actually have you move forward in your career over time, in part because they will shout your name into rooms when you aren't there, into rooms of opportunity. And women in particular need both. And so I find myself in those situations at both places like 1871, a tech hub, and places like Techstars, which is growing new companies, as both a mentor and a sponsor, because you can't leave people with just skills. They often need those introductions that are just like, to some extent, our mutual friend David Kirschenbaum served as a sponsor that led me to you, right? He put his name against mine, which led you to trust me, even though you and I didn't know each other very well, and led you to take the meeting with me, right?
Yes.
So that sponsorship is more valuable to me over time than any one skill set you might teach me in a transactional way. So I do both. And what I would say is, I once had a mentor, and I actually tell this story in class at times, that I didn't ask for, but he taught me one of the more valuable lessons in life that I often pass on. So Jim Leotoud, who has passed away, was the father of Jimmy John's. I don't know if you've ever had a Jimmy John's sandwich, but
Yes, I have.
okay, so James Sr. was Jimmy's father and owned 65 patents, and encountered me in a meeting about 15 years ago and said, "I'm going to be your mentor." Now, I did not ask him for him to be my mentor. And I didn't know what it meant. I really was like, what does this mean? I didn't ask. He was like, I want to bet on you, and I'm going to teach you everything I know about business. Now, I'm a busy person. I'm doing a lot of things. I'm not saying I was arrogant enough to think I knew everything, but I certainly didn't ask for this mentor. So here's what he said to me, Mark. He said, "We are going to meet every other week at the Four Seasons at this table.
Okay.
And you are going to bring me your P&L. You're going to bring me these documents, and we're going to go through them with a fine-tooth comb. And you are going to tell me all of your business issues, and I am going to talk them through with you one by one so that I can teach you everything I know." And I was like, really? Like, did I sign up for this? Because I don't think I did, right? And it was non-optional. But I will tell you, I learned more in that 6-month period than I did in 6 years of running a company. And I will tell you the number one thing I learned from him. He once asked me, "So who does your CFO report to?" And I said, "Our COO." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm super busy as the CEO doing this and this and this. And I need our chief operating officer to have all of these other people reporting to him. And he said, "But Suzanne, in my conversations with you, your number one place of insecurity are the finances, are the numbers." I said, "Exactly. That's why I want the CFO to report to the COO, who's much better than I am at the numbers." And he said, "Oh no. Delegate that which you know. Keep that which you don't."
Wow.
And he said,
Uh,
"I want you to go back to the office today and change your reporting system." And I did, and it changed everything.
By the way, that's but I'm going to use that about 5,000 times in the next year. That is incredibly powerful. That is what an amazing piece of advice that is.
Incredible, right? So
Uh,
that's the kind of mentoring that I'll take and I will use. But otherwise, sponsorship all day long.
how about you're starting to be honored by a lot of prestigious organizations and awards? Why don't you tell the people who are watching this about the Human Rights Medallion Award?
I really appreciate you asking about that. Honestly, I really do, because I'm actually a person of faith, and I am not someone who shies away from expressing that. Not in a uh, I don't evangelize. I don't impose it on other people. But the reason that my Jewish faith comes up in the workplace is, for example, I don't teach on Friday nights because
Mhm.
I observe the Jewish Sabbath. It often comes up from a political point of view because I'm on a campus. And on a campus, there are often issues around the state of Israel. I often have students who will come to me for either advice or to speak for them. And it's hard. And it's very hard to also be a public figure at a company like Bonfire and have to walk this very interesting line between having private feelings about my faith, about political views, and yet to lead a very diverse group of people who I know have a wide range of views. So the role that I've really tried to play, which I think the Human Rights Medallion Award reflects, is to try to really have an understanding of what it takes to have difficult conversations across many different perspectives and points of view, while still holding on to my core beliefs about what is right for my people and for the world, and to really invest in what the Jewish faith would call tikkun olam, which is making the world a better place. And to do that in a way that I hope never makes the person on the other side of the table feel imposed upon or not listened to. So it was a very meaningful award. It was also meaningful because I received it with my husband. And the beautiful thing, too, which I know you can envision, is our 5 adult children were the chairs of the event, right? Which, we often go to these events where, they have very prestigious people in the community who host the event. But in this case, it was our children. And then Governor Pritzker, who's a dear friend, but also a very, stand-up person in the community, introduced us and gave us the award. So it was a very beautiful moment for us. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
How do your 5 kids reconcile themselves when they have a parent that's such a powerhouse? Is how did each of them navigate that in their life?
It's come up in a very interesting way recently because, first of all, my second oldest son is now a student at Kellogg.
Okay.
And that's very new. Um, Now, Muchin is my maiden name, and I've never changed it. So my children do not have my last name, which is relevant to this answer. So my son, who's at Kellogg, his last name is not Muchin.
Okay.
My youngest son recently started working at 1871. Okay. his last name is not Muchin either. And in both of those environments, using my name is a very powerful thing. And they are both very, very aware of the pros and cons of doing that. In fact, we were just talking about it last night with my father at dinner. Because when you grow up with someone whose name can offer privilege as a child, that is often not a good thing, and does not actually help you when you're trying to earn your own path in life. And we've really been clear, and I'm curious as to how you have navigated this with your children, but we've really asked our children to be conscious always of the introductions they make, of what they ask of us. All of our children work independently in their own fields, and we help them from a networking point of view and will always support them. But they know that it's cringeworthy, to walk into a room and like if my son went around at Kellogg and put, figuratively on his shirt, I'm Professor Muchin's son, I think that would not bode well for him. Right? For all kinds of reasons. But I think used strategically, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. But I'm curious, how have you done that with your own children?
I just think that children at one point will say, how am I going to ever be more successful than my father or a mother? And I think the gift would be when they flip the script and they decide, I can take what my father has built and stand on his shoulders and do things he's never thought of or never created. And then they have their own path. And I think the to me, the number one job of an entrepreneur is to protect his or her confidence. But I also think that it's okay to fail, meaning that ultimately I think it's helping your, that I think our job as parents is to help, is not to make them happy or not to protect them, but to help them make good choices in life. And and get them to understand that when they do fail, that that's just one step closer to success, or with every problem there's an
Yeah.
opportunity, and just how they navigate the world with a mindset, because they grow up with different problems. Many people would love to exchange problems of our children have, but they also still comes with real problems. And I think that's the navigation piece, is to help them through that. And the crazy thing, I don't know about you, Suzanne, but I was raised by wolves. There's no book on this. I'm
Right.
trying to make it up as I go
Yeah.
along. I'm with Lisa. We're
Right.
trying to just do everything we can do we have a blended family, and we're doing everything we can to raise 5 healthy
Yeah.
children. But I, I'm doing the best I can. I with the tools I have. I hope I'm not going to get my report card for another 20 years or so. You know,
So what's interesting that you said, and I could not agree more, is you do your best to let your children, each of them differently, define success on their own terms. Because if the bubble over their head is, how can I be more successful than my parents? That success is based on your definition and my definition of what we thought success was, being raised by wolves, right? Like
Mm.
we didn't know what success was. So we made it up as we went along and ended up here or there. And my definition of success and your definition of success might even be very different from one another. And so, even part of what we do at Bonfire is we try to give the women, from an empowerment point of view, this idea. And I say this with full respect to you and to all men, because I want to be clear about something at Bonfire. Bonfire is not of women, by women, for women, only to the benefit of women. We truly believe that when women rise, it's good for everyone, men included. But I will say this: work as a construct was built by men for men in a world in which women weren't working. So work hasn't been working for women for a very, very long time, because we entered this place and this space that wasn't made for us. It really wasn't made for women who were giving birth and had primary responsibility for children and household, it wasn't made for us. And I say all this to say one of the messages we send to the women of Bonfire, and surely what we say to our children, the boys and the girls, is success has so many dimensions. And I saw something that I really loved on Instagram yesterday, which said, in this new generation, and you can call them Gen Z, whatever you want to call them, one of the badges of honor is a healthy nervous system. And what that means to me, and I agree with this, is that they're not burned out. They're not overly anxious all the time. And while we can say, okay, but isn't that teaching them to work less or be lazy? I don't think so. I think it's trying to teach them that there's more to life. And that doesn't mean work doesn't matter. It means that work needs to play a role in a bigger idea of success. That's what I think.
It makes me think now as I'm dealing with more and more millennials that what I don't want to do is become the old man who goes out on the lawn and just yells at everybody. But we're trying to kind of reconform to what they want to do. But I think there are some guiding principles, I think, of that folks are missing the boat, I think, in this generation in terms of what they need to do to be truly successful. But maybe work-life balance was out of balance for people. And I think at some point it doesn't mean that, I think if you want to have, success, and you want to have health, you want to have wealth, you want to have love, you want to have purpose, and you want to get all four of those things working in the right balance for you. But I think that at the same sometime there's got to be one or two of them that are temporarily out of balance to really achieve what you want to achieve, or you're
I
not going to be
agree.
successful at all of them. So it's not going to be like a linear having all four. But how did you go run a company and raise five kids and do this, and so I'm sure there were times you're out of balance, and so the
Oh,
idea
yeah.
would be to figure out how you can continue to moderate and mitigate that going forward. But with the limited time we have left, there's so many things I'd like to talk to you about.
Yeah.
But I've heard you describe yourself as a quarterback of big ideas. Tell people that are watching this what that means.
I I have a very specific definition of what an idea is. So to me, an idea is a very precious thing. It's not an opinion and it's not a concept. An idea is the solution to a problem that many people feel that can manifest itself in a way that has a market demand and can therefore go to market and scale, and has a design element to it such that it can be touched and felt both figuratively and literally by the people who find it of use. And in order to manifest that kind of concept, you need a lot of players involved. You need money people, you need mattering people, meaning influence people, you need operational people, technical people, and all of those people need a quarterback. And to me, a quarterback is somebody who sees the plays and has no fear running them and knows so many plays that they always have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, depending on who they're playing on the other side, but is also very willing to be coached. And so for me, I know my role relative to an idea. And I think that the problem that too many entrepreneurs have is that they see what needs to be done. They get excited about something and they see the possibilities of it, but they aren't clear enough about what their role is relative to what needs to be done. So I always ask myself, and this is the question of the hour, I think, for all of us: what is mine to do relative to what needs to be done? Because if you can answer that question, your life is so much better.
Say that one more time.
What is mine to do relative to what needs to be done? Because it's one thing, Mark, to be the person who sees what needs to be done. But unless you're also super clear about what is yours to do relative to what needs to be done, you will always be less happy, less successful, more exhausted, and less on gift. And so to me, my relationship to the idea is knowing what is mine to do relative to what needs to be done. And I'm very, very lucky to have a business partner for my whole adult life, Rachel Bello, who knows the difference between a good idea and a bad idea. Because left to my own devices, I would just be running the plays. I would just be going like, got the ball, take it to market, let's go. And Rachel has been the saving grace of my career, because she's the saying to me, oh, no, you don't. You need to make sure this idea is truly a good idea. And I will also say, Mark, thanks to me, ideas go to market, because left to her own devices, Rachel would get stuck down the rabbit hole testing the idea. That's why we have, right.
That's a great partnership.
It's a great partnership.
The last question I have for you is, you've already told us we can't get into your course at Northwestern. We're not even students there. So I'm not going to ask to get into those students, but I have two questions. If you're employing women in your company and you want to take them to the next level, how do they get in touch with Bonfire? And if people want to hear more brilliance from you, how can they find out more about your readings, teachings, and thought and thinking?
That's so nice. Well, thank you. So Bonfire's website, which is bonfirewomen.com, has all the ways that you can get in touch with Bonfire. And I would say, if you are one of three people, you are either a woman in the workforce or someone who identifies as female, and you are, let's call it, 8 to 20 years into your career. 20 is probably a little on the later stage in your career, but if you're in that sort of earlier phase, mid phase, go to the website, you'll see where to connect. You do need to come in through your company, but that's as easy as a tap on the shoulder to your manager. Or you are a manager of a team, and that team can be 2 people, 3 people, 1,000 people. Go to Bonfire. Or if you're the head of a business unit or have a resource budget like DEI or L&D, learning and development, or diversity, equity, inclusion, you have a resource budget that supports talent, you're our customer. So if the problem that's keeping you up at night is talent, and diverse talent, and keeping talent, then you should be going to bonfirewomen.com. And, as far as hearing more from me, I will say, so Rachel and I have had a podcast since podcasts weren't a thing. And we have more than 100 plus episodes. The podcast used to be called The Big Payoff. It got rebranded only recently as the Bonfire Podcast with Rachel and Suzanne, but all of the episodes got rebranded. I will say, and I apologize to your team about this, it is rated E for explicit, and that's because I swear like a truck driver, and so does Rachel. And I apologize right now, and I have to always apologize to people who know me in the business world. Like, I don't know why the F it is labeled that way, but I will say that there's a lot of swearing on it. But there's a ton of content there, just a ton.
I appreciate both content and swearing, so it sounds like a perfect podcast for me to listen to. So I will appreciate that.
Oh my God. I will just, do we have time for a very short podcast
Yes,
story?
please. I'd love to hear the podcast story.
Quick podcast story. So it's actually a radio story because before we were on podcast, Rachel and I were on a business talk radio show called The Business Lunch Hour. And we were so bad. I mean, Mark, we were so bad. We were so bad that our callers hung up on us. Like they were calling for business advice and we were so bad because here's what was happening. Rachel and I are like, we're best friends. We were so busy entertaining each other that the engineer in the room, like in the glass room, okay, and this was going out to like hundreds of thousands of people live, would go to us like, cut, like he'd be like gesturing, cut, and we'd be like, what? And he'd give us the like, hang up the phone, like they've hung up, they're gone, you got right, until finally the producer came in. He's like, you guys are awful, you're terrible, like, wow. And so finally they're like, maybe we should try this thing called a podcast. And Rachel and I are like, what the F is a podcast? Yeah, podcasts.
Well, it's clear to me you have a partner in crime in business where you could not be as bold or as bawdy if you did not have a partner that was encouraging you and you encouraging her all the way too. That's why I was kidding you before this is our first season with a podcast. And, I think there's some things we do really well and are so proud of, but one of them is not being a podcast host. So
You're doing great.
I always say
I'm
going to rename the podcast, the Hero of the Hour podcast, the only podcast you can't understand. So, maybe I should just curse a little more or
maybe you're doing great.
But it's because I've got great guests like you, and I just want to thank you. And I am so excited about Bonfire. I'm so excited.
Thanks for the opportunity and for all of your help and support and investment and willingness to jump in head first. Honestly, thank you.
And and I hope we get to do a lot more good things, not only together but for the world. And and I just want you to have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you for
being
with us.
Thank you so much.